Hi everyone, thanks for joining me to talk about pain. Today's episode is another departure from my pain-centric episodes typically because there's some real exciting research going on here in the field of spinal cord injuries, stroke injuries, and so forth, and some major advancements. And I just wanted to share these with you because they are huge. So that's what today's episode is about. If you remember, one of my last episodes was about a stroke, and it was featuring this article here: epidural stimulation of the cervical spinal cord for post-stroke upper limb paralysis. A scary sounding research name. Basically, these scientists put little electrical stimulation paddles on the spinal cord and restored upper body movement and usage, voluntary control of the upper body upon stimulating certain areas of the spinal cord. And I went over that. Please listen to that because that is a game changer in and of itself. But if you remember, at the bottom of this article, I mentioned the articles, the research articles or the reference articles that a lot of this research was based off of was just chock full of fascinating research. And so I found this one, number 22, Wagner FB et al. Targeted neurotechnology restores walking in humans with spinal cord injury. And that article is found in Nature. And so I went down that rabbit hole and figured and looked at that article, and this gentleman was featured in that article. He was one of the authors. And so I decided to track down, who is this guy and where is he located? So he's a researcher in France who is an engineer and a neuroscientist. Anyway, so I was looking at his articles, and I found this one called "The Neurons That Restore Walking After Paralysis." So I went down that rabbit hole, and this is his article, or he's one of the authors on this article. Actually, Claudia Kath is the lead author on this, but Fabian Wagner is one of the authors. And so I was looking down this, and oh my gosh, it is just fascinating. And so that's what today's episode is about, is what this research is about. How are they getting people to be able to walk after paralysis? So I'm going to be jumping around a little bit, and some of the terminology in here might be a little imposing, but I'm just giving you an overview, and it's not important that you understand everything that I'm talking about. It's just so you can get the broad strokes of the amazing research that's going on in the field of neuroscience, and I'm just amazed by it. These guys identified the neurons that are involved in recovery of walking. So they're interneurons, which are located in the spinal cord, and I'll show you what that means in just a second here. Now, what's really interesting is that these neurons are not required for walking if you don't have a spinal injury. But if you do have a spinal injury, these interneurons are really important, apparently. And so the neurons that orchestrate walking reside in the lumbar spinal cord. So to walk, the brain broadcasts commands through descending pathways that cascade from the brainstem to activate these neurons. These are their words. So I just want to show you what they're kind of talking about here. Descending pathways. So if we look at this image over here, we can see that the descending pathways are in red. Okay? Now, descending means they're coming down from the brain, which means that they are motor pathways, okay? And so these over here are sensory pathways. These are going up to the brain from the body. And so we're gonna just go over these really quickly so you can understand. I mean, they don't even mention many of these in the article, but I think it's important for you to understand what they're doing and what's going on with this. It's just fascinating. So let's go over the ascending tracks, the ones that are going up to the spinal cord first, all right? So these carry sensory information from the body to the brain. And you can see this big chunk right here. That's called the dorsal column medial lemniscus system. And here's the label here Okay, now this carries fine touch, vibration, and proprioception. And I promise I'm not going to linger on this. Whole episode is not going to be digging down in all this, but I'm just giving you an overview. And look, you can see in this picture here how it's broken down. These little slivers indicate, hey, here's the sacral, here's the stuff coming up from the sacrum, here's the stuff coming up from the lumbar spine, from the thoracic spine, from the cervical spine. I just think this is fascinating that the body is that they have mapped this out this precisely and that it's organized like this in the body. Okay, now you're going to see over here that we also have spinal cerebellar tracts. Okay, we have the posterior and anterior, not so important, but I mean, these are important. It's not important that you remember that they're the posterior and anterior, but these carry conscious sensations such as pain, touch, temperature, and unconscious proprioception, which helps our brain refine motor movements. So these guys, spinal cerebellar, are really important for the feedback for the brain so it understands, it can refine our movements. Okay, then you see this down here, the anterior lateral system. Okay, comprised of the lateral and the anterior spinal thalamic tracts. Okay, so this carries crude touch, pressure, pain, and temperature. Okay, and then you see another little one down here. So these are the main guys that are carrying all this information from our body up to our brain. And look, you can see how this anterolateral system is broken down. They've even mapped it out here: sacral, lumbar, thoracic, and cervical. Very similar to the dorsal column medial lemniscus system. All right. So this is basically, these are the things that are going up to our brain that communicate, hey, what's going on with our body and head. All right. Now the descending tracts are also, and by the way, I'm getting a lot of this information from Teach Me Anatomy, and I'm going to put that link to that website so you can go in deeper if you want a deeper dive of all this stuff. Of course, you can see that this image is coming from Geeky Medics, and here's the link here, so you can go on YouTube and visit that website if you like to. Thank you to Geeky Medics and Teach Me Anatomy. Okay, now what I want to do is just go over these descending pathways. So remember, the red ones are the descending, and they are carrying stuff down from the brain and telling our body how to work. So we have pyramidal and extrapyramidal tracts. Now the pyramid is just an area of the brain through which, here it is right here, pyramid tracts. All right, so we have the lateral cortical spinal and the anterior cortical spinal tracts. And basically these tracts are coming down through a particular zone of the brain. All right, that's why it's called the pyramid. And so that's why they're called pyramidal tracts. Now the cortical spinal tracts supply the motor control to the body. And then we also have cortical bulbar tracts that supply motor control to the head and neck. Okay, now the extrapyramidal means basically they're going outside of this little structure in the brain called the pyramid. And you can see that we have a few of these here. So the vestibulospinal tracts convey balance and, balance and posture. All right, there's that guy. And then the reticulospinal tract it mediates voluntary movement and muscle control. So there's the reticulospinal tract. That's a pretty important one. All right. And then we have rubrospinal tracts, which says, according to the Teach Me website, it is unclear what this one does, and which amazes me that we still don't know a lot about what's going on in here in the spinal cord and how things communicate with our brain. And you're about to find out more about why that's relevant to this particular type of research. Okay? And then we have the tectospinal tracts, which coordinate head movements in relation to movement, and they don't have that one in this one because it's mostly dealing with lumbar issues, not so much head issues. Okay, so there's an overview of what the descending pathways are doing and where they're located. Look, they're broken down into sacral, lumbar, thoracic, and cervical zones again, just like the ascending pathways. Okay, so this is basically how the spinal cord is mapped out. We have these pathways going up and pathways coming down to help our brain understand what's going on and control movement. So when we have a severe spinal cord injury, it disrupts a lot of these pathways going up and down, and that's why basically we lose the ability to walk because some of these pathways may be severed. Some of them just there's trauma to them, and that inflammation then damages these pathways. So there's a lot of different reasons why the pathways would be damaged, but once they're damaged, that's when we have trouble, as you can imagine, because not only do we need motor signals coming down from the brain to make a muscle contract, but we also need this feedback, right? That's given to us by this spinal cerebellar and anterolateral system. All right, they give us feedback to our brain as to what's going on down here. So it's this constant communication that's necessary for movement. Okay, so what they found was it's not so much these pathways. Once they're disrupted, they found that there's other areas of the spinal cord that can help out with movement, and this is where interneurons come in. All right, so here's what an interneuron is. It's a really basic picture, but basically we have sensory information coming into our spinal cord through this dorsal column, and then it interacts with this interneuron in here, which then interacts with our motor neuron that makes a muscle contract. Okay, that's a real basic idea of what the interneuron does. It's means it's inside, and it communicates sensory and motor information and basically connects there. But this is why I like this picture. It's one of the few pictures that shows that it also connects to and communicates with these ascending and descending pathways. So the interneurons are really critical. And so in this article that I'm also going to link to, it's about interneurons and the neuroplasticity, which just means that they can actually change their jobs and maybe even their structure, depending on what's demanded of them. So here's a nice interneuron. Look how complicated all this is, all right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, a whole bunch of interneurons in here and types of interneurons. Now, I am not a neuroscientist, and I'm not even a physical therapist who specializes in neuroanatomy cases. But this new research is so incredible, I just have to try and dip my toes in it a little bit. So anyway, these are what interneurons do. Something comes into the spinal cord, the interneuron takes that information and transmits it to maybe a motor or muscle of some sort, or it's communicating with ascending and descending pathways. So it's really busy in here, okay? That's basically interneurons. And that's basically what these scientists are finding, is that these interneurons are critical to learning how to walk again. Okay, so what these guys are doing, just like that stroke rehab article that I featured a little while ago, they're putting electrodes on the spinal column where these nerve roots are coming in to the spinal cord in the dorsal area or posterior. This is where sensory information is coming in, and they put these electrical paddles right here where it's coming in, which then stimulates, apparently, the communication of the sensory fibers interaction with the interneurons, which then stimulates the interneurons to, I guess, communicate with other interneurons. Okay? Now, I guess, and it's not only me who doesn't understand this, but listen to this. The biological principles through which this EES stimulation, this electrical stimulation, epidural electrical stimulation, engages and remodels the lumbar spinal cord to restore walking remain unknown. So not even the researchers understand why this is working. They just know that it's working. And based on this article it's called Spinal Interneurons as Gatekeepers to Neuroplasticity After Injury or Disease. I'll also put a little link to this one. This talks about the neuroplasticity just means that these guys are able to assume jobs that they maybe originally weren't designed to assume. So there's so much potential to reconfigure or change this idea of how these interneurons are interacting within the spinal cord after an injury, and this is what is critical to restoring walking. Rather than restoring the ascending or descending pathways, these interneurons seem to be critical to re-engaging this whole system. So it's just amazing. So the article itself, it involves 9 people, 6 with severe or complete motor paralysis, but all had some degree of sensation. So let's go ahead, and here is the article itself, all right? And I'm going to put a link there, all right? So you can see here's where they put the stimulation in the spinal cord. And they also did experiments with mice as well. And one of the really interesting things is, and they don't understand why this happened either, is that the metabolic activity of these spinal cord levels and the neuronal activity, here, you can see it over here. The spinal cord activity prior to the electrical stimulation was very high. After the electrical stimulation, it was much lower. They don't understand why this is happening. All right. So, but what's happening is, it seems that they are developing more precise activation of each level rather than this whole general screaming of the whole area. It's becoming more precise based on this electrical stimulation. Now they have had to map out those interneurons that I was showing you a picture of. They had to learn how to map this out. So if you read through this article, it is amazing all of the things that they had to do to figure out in order to make this happen. But they figured it out. That's the amazing thing. Oh, it's so complicated, and they were just able to figure this out. This is what amazes me. So anyway, there were 6 with severe or complete motor paralysis, which means that they couldn't move at all. But all had some degree of sensations. So something of those ascending pathways that we went over, all right? These ascending pathways here, something was still able to get up to the brain to say, hey, we have some sensation here. However, 3 of the people in the study had complete paralysis with no sensation or motor. So it worked for both of them. So what they say is that we hypothesize that this EES stimulation must engage and remodel the essential yet unidentified neurons in the spinal cord that become necessary for walking after paralysis. Moreover, the participants, including 2 with complete sensory motor paralysis, could exert volitional control over the amplitude of their steps. So they had control over the degree of contraction that was occurring once this electrical stimulation was set up. Okay, so what was also, unlike the stroke video before, these people underwent rehab with physical therapists. So this consisted of 5 months of standing, walking, and performing various exercises while the electrical stimulation was on, 4 to 5 times a week for 1 to 3 hours. So it was a mixture of walking on a treadmill and overground with multiple assistive devices, sit to stand, standing, leg and trunk muscle exercises, swimming and cycling. Weight-bearing capacities improved considerably over time, which enabled the participants to walk outdoors with an assisted device for stability. So if you watch the supplementary videos that are associated with this article, and I hope you do, especially supplementary video number 1, will show a graphic of the insertion of this device, and it'll show these participants actually walking with their assistive devices. Why do they need assistive devices? Well, because this isn't complete restoration of their proprioceptive systems, which is the joint feedback, all right? This system is stimulating gross muscle movements that allow walking, but it's not fine-tuned enough so that they can balance while walking without some kind of device that they need to hold on to help them, not fall over. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that first supplementary video. So if you link on this article and you go over here to the right, you will see let's see, supplementary information. Just click on that and it'll take you to the supplementary videos. And I'm going to just play for you supplementary video number 1. It's fascinating.
9 individuals with a chronic spinal cord injury followed a neurorehabilitation program supported by a multi-directional bodyweight support system and epidural electrical stimulation of lumbar spinal cord, which we termed EES rehab. EES was delivered through a paddle lead targeting the dorsal roots innervating lumbar segments and a neurostimulation platform enabling real-time control over multiple bursts of stimulation. EES enabled the immediate recovery of walking while supported in the bodyweight support. When EES was turned on, the participants regained voluntary control over the activity of otherwise paralyzed muscles, which allowed them to modulate their step height. Walking improved over the course of EES rehab, enabling the recovery of walking without support and eventually a transition to community settings when EES was turned on. We leveraged molecular imaging to monitor the neuronal activity in the spinal cord of humans following 15 minutes of continuous walking before and after EES rehab. We found that walking involved a robust neuronal activity in the lumbar spinal cord and that EES rehab led to a pronounced reduction of this activity.
I just think it's amazing. So that is the article. This is the website of one of the researchers. If you want to do a deep dive like I have, these are some of the other articles that this person has been involved with. I actually emailed this person to see if they would be on this podcast. Of course, they haven't gotten back to me because they're too busy doing important work. So anyway, I just wanted to present this really, really critical, important, mind-blowing information. And for those of you who have undergone, spinal cord injuries or stroke injuries, there is hope for you on the horizon. I don't know whether or when this will be made available in the U.S. or if there's any research happening in the U.S. But to me, this is so promising. I'm just amazed by it. So, thank you for being here and listening to me put this together and bring this to you. And I hope it helps.